And you are listening to SCW, the wrestling channel. You're probably even viewing it as well. Hi, welcome to the channel here on youtube.com. Please like, share, subscribe, and please share with a friend. It is This Week in Wrestling, that's right. And what a week it has been. I can tell you for free, there is so much to go through. We've had to condense this into as short of a show as possible. I think George with us on the show today, could talk for hours on the topics we've had this week, but it's been very eventful. But George, it's great to have you on the line, great to have you on the show. Are you looking forward to talking about what's been, well, quite an impactful week of wrestling?
Yeah, definitely. It's been one of them weeks where we've just got so much to talk about, but thank you for having me back on the show. I'm looking forward to discussing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to touch on quite a few things today, but I will say on the very brief side, very early, that usually we cover something in every show of wrestling. But I've done a video on Impact, a couple of videos on Impact Wrestling actually this week, including a full review of this week's show. So if you haven't seen that and you're more interested in Impact stuff, then do go and check that video out. But if you're liking your WWE, your NXT, your AEW, make sure to stick around. Plenty of topics to be talking about. We've got potentially a new faction coming to Monday Night Raw. What was Raw Underground, honestly? We've got perhaps the most, well, I don't know, controversial NXT feud of all time to talk about. And also perhaps the next big thing, a debut of Ridge Holland. So we've got lots to discuss there. And of course, AEW, another solid show as well. We'll touch on things like Eric Bischoff coming up later in the show. But let's start off then with the new faction, George. And I want to get your thoughts in, because we kind of literally had this play through the show where we had a tweet come out before Raw saying a new faction was coming. So we kind of felt we had to know to look out for something. We knew Shane McMahon was going to be at the show as well. A lot of flicking with the lights, a lot of playing around with microphones, people losing their audio. It felt that a lot of things were just going wrong. But in the end, we found out that there was a generator that had been broken. It seemed like a few cocktails had been thrown at it, but it looked like some vandals. But instead, it seems to be 5 bodies. Looks to be potentially a female in the group as well. They were dressed up like the ninjas, but I don't think it's Tozawa. Hopefully, we've got a big new stable on the way, although I did feel personally that this was perhaps not the hottest start for them. I'd like to know your thoughts on this stable.
Yeah, I thought it's something different. I think definitely they didn't really get much time. I thought it was very interesting the way they debuted. I thought what was kind of weird is WWE built it up before it happened, which kind of maybe was a bit of a silly move based on the time they get. What did you think of that tweet WWE sent out during the day before?
I mean, the thing is, I can understand that they want to probably grab some extra viewers. They maybe, I mean, for me, the whole thing screams a bit of desperateness at this point, because it feels that this hasn't been building for weeks. Same with Raw Underground, which we'll come up to very shortly. But it just felt with this stable thing that you know, it kind of felt a bit rushed and a bit last minute. I mean, the rumors were that after this went out, that apparently the media team actually let this tweet out early and wasn't meant to, and they kind of rolled with it because they saw that there was fan interest on, you know, social, you know, media platforms like Twitter. You know, myself included, was quite interested in what was going to be with this new stable, was sort of on the lookout. I kind of felt that when we saw some mistakes happening with things like the lighting, with the mics and stuff, I kind of felt to myself, we're probably leading to something. Maybe it's going to be something interesting, something good. If we hadn't have had that tweet, I think I would have been perhaps a bit like, what the hell is going on here? Probably, you know, it didn't have the best look and feel about it, let's just say, in the PC. I mean, you look at great, you know, arrivals into WWE, like The Shield, for example. Let's talk about Nexus as a great debut they had. This group here just felt like you said, it was like a 30-second filler. If you blinked, you missed it. And even if you want, it comes down to errors even recording. You know, I mean, WWE said that they caught this earlier in the day, and the video they had was pitch black. So, I mean, you know, there's a few hiccups already with this, but I'm hoping it's just a hiccup that leads to a good starting point. Hopefully a stronger build going on into future weeks, because there certainly is intrigue of who is behind this.
Yeah, definitely. I think a couple of key things about it. I felt it was an interesting way for them to debut. I would like to see them do more on the show. The thing that I didn't really like about the vignette they did was them running away. It's almost like they're cowards. It's almost like a group of teenagers down the park on a Saturday night with a bottle of cider getting chased by the police or something. I don't know whether you got that feeling. Them running away looked a bit stupid, really.
No, I did feel so, yeah. I mean, if someone's going to cause chaos and problems and stuff, you would have felt to yourself that they were kind of willing to almost stand their ground, that they're going to take over the show and they're going to, you know, do what they need to, and they're not going to back down. And maybe that's the sort of thing we're hoping to see from this. But, I mean, it is week 1. There's plenty of time for it to become something. And I'm sure there's lots of ins and outs and lots of ways we can discuss how this could link to perhaps other storylines perhaps from the past. I mean, for one example, I know you and I have had discussion off air of this, but a potential of how maybe at last we could find a use for the hacker gimmick that was going around before. This would sort of play into, because that was kind of chaos, looking into what other people were doing, spying, having control of the show in different ways and formats. So in some ways that could be linked together. Maybe that would be a way to rescue that hacker gimmick.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good way. There's a couple of key things I think that are quite interesting. If you look back at it as well, with the whole sort of one of the last messages from the hacker was about payback. We've obviously got a payback pay-per-view coming up, so that's quite a funny connotation if they do that. But if we're looking at early members, I think we're definitely looking at Donovan Dijakovic. I think he's obviously cleared his Twitter, so he's probably in. Tommaso Ciampa's another one that's cleared his Twitter, so he's probably going to be in. The female, I've got it down to one of three people. Take your pick. I would say it's probably either going to be Carmella. She's doing nothing at the moment. Dana Brooke, I could see her getting revenge. I think she did the original voiceover in one of the hacker videos as well, which maybe fits in. And the other one is Chelsea Green. We thought Chelsea Green was coming up. We haven't seen her for ages. That would kind of fit. And then if we're looking at the other two people, I would really like to see Ricochet and Cedric Alexander. I think they've both got a point to prove. I think a heel turn, if this is a heel stable, would be really good. But clearly, whoever this is, have got an agenda against WWE and the upper management. I expect this week, on the coming week Raw, it's going to go on another level. I really hope we see more of them. And I really hope that the reveals are slow. We don't need to find out who it is this week. We need to find out sort of maybe in a month's time, 2 months' time.
Well, like you say there, with the payback pay-per-view coming up, and with that famous line there as well, it almost feels that would be a great, obviously, purpose, and to actually have a pay-per-view 1 week after SummerSlam. You would actually think yourself maybe a first reveal on that show, or a purpose or a match or something with that show, whether they take out other superstars, or, they could actually find more of a purpose or more of a role on the show where it affects the current roster and you're not actually sure who it is, and you start finding yourselves with the whodunits. I mean, there's lots of different ideas. I mean, we know there was an early indication that this could have been Justice as the name, which would have been like Just Us, but with, like you said, with the sound of Justice. But that was kind of scrapped because it was a trademark thing that was put in for WWE, but they did later actually announce on their social media platforms that the name for the group will be Retribution. So, I mean, clearly what they are is they're looking for some revenge. They feel wronged in some way. So like you said, there's a host of names you've shown there. I have my feelings that I would agree with a few of them. There's one or two perhaps I wouldn't, but certainly wouldn't rule them out. All of them have, in some format, have a way of needing retribution, because it depends what retribution they're after. Is it a lack of TV time? Let's say people already on the main roster that are looking for their spotlight, their chance, and they're just being overlooked all the time. Maybe it's something like a catering crew, someone like a Bo Dallas who you've not seen or heard of for absolutely ages. What if it's someone from NXT who feels like, you say, Ciampa or Dijakovic? People are thinking, why were we not called up sooner? What was the point of having us in NXT all the time? People used to come up, or people have come in NXT and passed us by. Say it's Ciampa. He could be mad at the likes of Matt Riddle who have come in after him and gone up before him. We know the truth, and we know Ciampa's never really wanted to leave NXT, but it certainly is an interesting twist. I'll give my thoughts on which members I think it could be in a minute, but first off, I'd like to know your thoughts about the name Retribution and what you think about it.
Yeah, I think it's really, really sort of impactful. It's pretty basic, but it does what it needs to do. I'm a bit disappointed WWE have announced it already. I really would love to have seen them. Nobody know who they are, and then we get that revealed later. But it's interesting to see where that goes. I'm just hoping that the payoff, there's going to be a good reason why these people behind. The only thing I'm kind of struggling to figure out at this point is how the NXT superstars are going to be linked with the WWE superstars. What's the connection there, really? Unless it's ex NXT superstars, maybe.
Potentially. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see. And hopefully, like you say, the plot needs to thicken and we need to see this play out over a number of weeks. We can't just have like a reveal straight away. I think it would almost cheapen it straight away if they don't have that feel of power. You want to see that when the stable comes in, like if you look at classic stables, we mentioned Nexus earlier, and the wheels kind of fell underneath them, actually, ironically, at SummerSlam. But before that, they were really strong. You look back at WCW, the NWO, it took months before they actually lost even one match, let alone the momentum. So you need to see a strong stable here. And I want to see a powerful message continue with these guys. And I want to see something more impactful from next week, because, like you say, they did make a statement with this show, because obviously they had some impact on the mic sounds, the lighting, and it puts certain superstars off in their matches. But at the same time, I want to see something that really is a direct hit rather than something that's making subtle problems for the show. I want to see a direct, and it's us that did it.
Yeah, I really like that, mate. I think what I would do if I was booking this, the next step for me really is you've got to have Stephanie McMahon be kidnapped or something like that. You've got to have something, one of the McMahons be taken. I think that's kind of the route you go down. These guys have got to come in at the top, really. They've got to start off strong. If they're only attacking mid-carders and opening acts, I think it's not a great way. And for me, though, I do think that this is a bit too late, really, to a certain point. I think this is Sanity all over again, but this is probably the way Sanity maybe should have come into WWE.
It certainly would have fit their gimmick. That's the thing. It would have been perfect. Even like the Forgotten Sons, for example, I think would have been a great way for them to have debuted. Of course, lots changed with them since anyway. But I mean, there's certain groups and certain people they've built up in the company before that this would have fit. And maybe it would be a great way to put one or two of them back onto TV. I mean, we mentioned Killian Dane is actually rumoured to be at the SmackDown tapings this week, potentially with the Baron Corbin storyline going on right now. The King Corbin, they have the ransom on Matt Riddle. Apparently him and Danny Burch were definitely due to be at the tapings. Whether that will continue or not, because I know the tapings were delayed, we'll have to wait and see. But that certainly was in the pipeline. But it's certainly... It does add its intrigue. We'll have to see where it's going to go. I'd like to just give my ideas and potentials of members, because I've heard a lot of things floating around. I agree with you. I think Ciampa is a natural leader for this, and it would add instant credibility. He did have the Twitter beef with Randy Orton not too long ago. He's not been on NXT since his loss at In Your House against Karrion Kross. It would be a perfect way to bring him through. Dominic Dijakovic has been rumoured on Raw for the longest time, so I like that as well. There has been rumours of the Undisputed Era as well, potentially in that role. Of course, now it looks like the direction is different for the time being, certainly at least up to the takeover. But I mean, you could say that it would shock the system if they were involved in it somehow. So at least they've got the tagline there. Like you said there, Ali, another one there could be mentioned. I mean, of course, he was a part of the Hackett gimmick. He wasn't on Raw at all this week. Neither was Ricochet or Cedric Alexander. So there certainly could be people in there. Bo Dallas is a name that's been thrown around because it's been so long since he's, done anything. I don't think people even half remember if he was released or not with the company at this point. As for the female names, I'm not with you on Carmella, just purely because unless this goes across all three brands, she's with Corey Graves, and they like to keep the couples together. So that's my only knock with that one. Otherwise, I'd be fully on board. It would be great to see it'd be great to see her have a creditable role on programming, because she's got lost, and she was a champion 2 years ago. I'd love to see her back in a prominent role on TV in some format. But Dana Brooke, I think, is a hot shot name there for you. Chelsea Green, of course, was meant to come to the main roster, and another one that was supposed to come to the main roster since February. So we're going back about now, 6 months, and she's not made a shout, is Vanessa Bourne, which I'm sure to a lot of casual names probably not familiar with her work. But if you've been following NXT, she was one of the undercards there. She was in the duo with Aaliyah, who of course is now with the Robert Stone brand. So it would be interesting to see what role, if any, will be brought in with these members as and when they are announced. It would be fun if the people actually on the main roster, though, who actually are not getting their TV time, but I suppose time will tell with it. But you mentioned a McMahon a minute ago, George, about being kidnapped. Very 1999. I like it, with the old corporate ministry theme there. Would you like to see them go underground and kidnap Shane?
Yeah, no, that could be funny. I think they've got to do something like that. But no, what a nice pun and a nice segue into our next segment, certainly.
Absolutely, indeed. Because, I mean, is it the return people wanted of Shane McMahon? I know in about, 2016 he came back. We did a show. It was one of our very first shows we did. And it was just a podcast at the time. I don't think we even put it on YouTube. It's just for us having our discussions at the time. And Shane McMahon came back, and it got a monstrous response. Everyone was so hot about it in the wrestling community. And I guess perhaps Vince and Bruce kind of felt, well, that was a ratings puller, so we need to bring Shane McMahon in. And they brought in this Raw Underground, which, no, it's not the Union Underground. It's not the Lucha Underground. This Raw Underground, it seems very, very similar kind of feel to a Lucha Underground, which kind of got that dark cinematic kind of feel. We've got the ring, but this, of course, not like Lucha Underground, has no ring ropes. Very MMA style, you could say. Very brawl for all, almost like. It's kind of got a shoot feel. We've got female dancers in there. It's very 1990s feel about it. It's certainly a bit bonkers. I'm still... Even though it's days later, I have made my mind up, but I haven't made my mind up. Of course, I'm open to the creativity. I like the fact that they've tried something different, even if they have probably only just watched Fight Club for the first time. But at the same time, it's bonkers, George. I need to know your thoughts on this. What is going on with Raw Underground?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. I think you look at like the whole night they're building up this bodyguard, the guy that was the ninja, basically at the front of the door guarding it, and you're thinking, is this something to do with the stable? When you do find out that it's Lucha Underground, or not Lucha Underground, sorry, Raw Underground even, it's definitely a shock. You're seeing these wrestlers almost like UFC shoot fighting. But the thing for me that I was just surprised about, there was no real build for this. There was no real sort of this was coming. It was just so left field, if that makes sense. It's definitely different. I'm interested to see where this goes and how this is going to be used as a vehicle, because bear in mind we are only 2 weeks away from a pay-per-view, probably the second biggest pay-per-view of the year. So I think it's a strange time to debut this new concept. It sounds like to me WWE are panicking. I think they're just throwing anything at the wall, hoping it sticks at the moment, clearly displayed by this at the moment.
I would agree with you. It felt like throughout the whole of Raw. I mean, obviously, we're not going to go into every detail of Raw, but if you look at the food poisoning angle with the Street Profits and Garza and Andrade, I mean, that simply could have been just a simple singles wrestlers are better than tag team wrestlers in singles matches, but they had to throw a very wild angle out there. They've thrown the faction, which we've already discussed about. So many different things just came out from left field, like you say, without a build, without promotion. Shane McMahon just even being back in general. What is he doing back? Well, I mean, perhaps we could have been given 2 or 3 weeks notice of something unique coming in. And like you say, with a pay-per-view coming up, I mean, how is this going to play into a pay-per-view?
Yeah, that's the thing. I can see this. The problem with this, I can see people tuning in again next week, but once you've done 2 weeks, it's kind of, I think the interest is going to go. I just don't see really where this fits in, unless this is a way to sort of, ultimately the whole vehicle and the whole point of this seemed to be get the Hurt Business over this week, which I just don't really get what this is. This is almost like a 2020 version of the Brawl for All, except for it's not real. And it's just random. The people you had in there were just really random people like Dabba-Kato. Then you've got Dolph Ziggler. And I just don't really get it, really. I just thought it was so weird. There was no real reason why these people are fighting, really. It was never really explained. It's not like they're fighting for money. And then you've got the stripper girls from almost like from Impact Wrestling / Shotgun Saturday Night on the side. It was just a really weird way. And for the way for Shane McMahon to return, for me, it just didn't work, really. There was no real explanation to how Shane was involved in this and what the purpose of it was, really.
I mean, like you say, I mean, if we get some answers maybe in the next week or so, maybe we might sort of have a bit more of an idea of what we're going with. But yeah, I mean, just if you haven't seen it, I mean, where have you been? But we will explain it very quickly. But like you say, it's been like Shane McMahon kind of announcing with, these no names, if you want, surrounding the ringside bit with the no ropes. And we've kind of, like you say, a brawl for all. It's just like the MMA style shoot fighting, but of course it's not really shoot fighting. And we see superstars, like you said there, Dolph Ziggler and Eric from the main roster that were involved on it, picking up victories against some of these nobodies. And as well as that, we had a name, Dabba-Kato, who, of course, was formerly of NXT. And I kind of, when I first saw it, I felt to myself, when I saw Kato destroy not one but 2 people in a matter of a couple of moments, I kind of felt to myself that when there was all these no names down here, I kind of felt this, in one way, could be interesting because of the fact that you look at it and think, well, I don't want to say NXT has lost its identity, but NXT was kind of like the developmental kind of brand. And it's now become the 3rd brand. It won Survivor Series last year. It's down to 2 hours. It's head-to-head with another company every week. It's almost kind of lost where it was. It now gets veterans in, the people that have not had their big break to this point, but superstars that have fought for 10, 15 years or whatever, looking for their point through. Perhaps people that arguably should be on Raw and SmackDown in NXT, but I'll get to my point now. But you look at those younger individuals that have not had that chance to break through, like a Dabba-Kato. Maybe they were going to give an hour free of Raw, rather than having it by the ringside area. Maybe they'd have an hour of this underground, and we'd have this kind of way of trying to build some new stars on a flagship show. I thought maybe that could be an interesting way going forward. But then as soon as we had, names like Eric, and don't get me wrong, Eric was dressed as a golfer a few weeks ago. He could do with looking a bit tougher. And Dolph Ziggler, of course, being destroyed in a couple of championship matches. It's good to see them get some heat and win some quick matches. But I kind of felt that it lost a bit of, not that it had any logic to begin with, but if it had some logic of where I was going a second ago, it lost it immediately by having those names in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing with it, it's so out there, and you've got people like Dion Madden returning with no explanation. Dolph's obviously coming off of losing title matches, as you said, and he's in this spot with no explanation. It's just really, really weird. I think they're certainly doing different things. What I quite like about this, it's different, and you don't know what's coming next. I really had an interest on Raw this week of the unexpected. I really didn't know what was going next, and when you saw it, It's definitely nothing I saw coming. I thought it was a big shock. I'm just interested to see how they play this out, and I'm really interested to see what the whole point of this, unless this is going to lead to a match somewhere down the line and this type of gimmick. Maybe I think that's the only way maybe they'll go forward with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, like you say, if we can build to maybe some sort of program or something going forward. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, the Hurt Business were involved. Of course, they had an awful Raw. MVP, of course, felt affected by not winning the United States Championship, even though he was holding a replica title he'd made, which now Apollo Crews is keeping. Of course, Shelton Benjamin lost the 24/7 Championship, arguably to the Ninjas, not the new faction. Of course, Akira Tozawa is the new champion. So they had a lot of blame there, and they weren't happy about the generator, and they actually felt it was directed towards Shane. They completely destroyed, like you said, the likes of Dio Madden. Swerve Scott was actually down there as well. They destroyed a lot of guys down there and said that they were taking over in this place now. I mean, in one way, I kind of feel there could be some interest there with this Hurt Business down there, because it kind of feels that almost like we could be breaking away to like almost filmed angles rather than actually having, you know, cinematic angles rather than having cinematic matches. Would that be something that would interest you in like the Raw Underground, that perhaps you could see, perhaps, I don't know, MVP and Lashley with cigars, count up loads of money as, you know, people are trying to bare knuckle fight and trying to get their way in?
Yeah, I think I'd be a massive fan of that. I think the only thing that's kind of missing this was Dario Cueto. I think he would have fitted in, no word of a lie. But yeah, I think if they're going to do cinematic angles, this is definitely the way to kind of go. I think it clearly works. In Lucha Underground, it worked really well. So it's something different. I think this is clearly something to look forward to on the show. But I think the main benefit of this angle was the Hurt Business looked $1 million, in my opinion. They destroyed absolutely everybody. Lashley's looking pretty unstoppable, really. And the only thing I think was kind of disappointing is there was no real counter. It was almost like they've taken over. Yet this is Shane McMahon's sort of whole gimmick. It's just like, why is it destroyed on night one, really? He was sort of almost happy for them to take over. Really, I would have thought he should have protested a little bit. And then there should have been another run-in of some sort, really, I think, from another stable or another group, really, to build up a rematch next week or something.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you point out a lot of actual flaws there with it, and I think I agree with every single one of them, to be honest. It shows the lack of understanding of what the hell this is so far. So it's hard to really comment and say if it's good or bad at this point. I mean, I lean more on the negative because of the fact that I actually thought Raw the previous week was actually all right. And the fact we got thrown so many different random things to try and push up a rating, it just felt like everything come from left field. It almost felt like we're going to throw some stuff at the wall and see what sticks and see what fans may or may not be interested in. And the thing is that, you know, if you want to do the MMA style kind of thing, do you want to have, you know, your regular people in there? Like, I mean, I see Liv Morgan wants to be in there. There was actually a challenge thrown down, Booker T saying he immediately thought it was CM Punk on their watch along. They did a backstage watch along for SummerSlam 92. I mean, obviously CM Punk definitely is not going to come back for that, but he did actually show some interest. But I think he obviously had a nice joke line to go with it. You actually want to see me win one of these, I think was his reply. So, you know, it's certainly interesting to see what can come of it. But what I've seen so far, like you say, is more questions than answers, a lot of confusion. A lot of people see WCW 2000. I don't hear a lot about 2001. Was that better than 2000? Because for me, it feels like this is off the deep end. This could be, you know, beyond WCW 2000 unless we get some good explanations coming from next week.
Yeah, I just can't believe they came up with this. I think it's so left field, and I think I just don't get how this is meant to help the ratings, really. It's just, I just don't really get it. It's just really, really odd. And the fact that you're doing it with no explanation to what's happened or how it's coming about and what the benefit of it is. Let's hope next week we get it. If it's dropped in by next week or dropped in 2 weeks' time, I question why they've done it, really, on the way to SummerSlam.
Absolutely. Well, Raw Dark lasted 3 weeks. I think the Brand for Brand invitation lasted a couple of weeks. So, I mean, it's not out of the realm that this could be dropped quite quickly. But the Raw rating was actually 1.7 million-ish throughout the average of the whole 3-hour show. So the rating was up. The question, so it kept people's enjoyment, I guess, or certainly wanting to know what the hell was going on, I guess, at least. People, I reckon, will probably tune in for it next week. But like you say, what happens in a couple of weeks? What happens when people have got a bit more of an answer? This needs to, you know, evolve into something. And I say the word evolve there because NXT, of course, like I said, I don't know if it's lost its identity or not, but Evolve has been purchased by the WWE, and I think wouldn't Raw Underground be quite good if it was for Evolve for 1 hour, and like you say, pushing these no-name talents and making a new star or two that could maybe come in and perhaps take on other people at some point, because Dabba-Kato wasn't around when the Hurt Business took over.
No, convenient that, hey?
Yeah, a little bit convenient. Well, I think then we've covered Raw Underground for now, but I think we'll move on then from Raw and we'll move on to NXT because, well, that was just as eventful, wasn't it? I think we need to start with something that George, I know me and you wasn't necessarily a fan of. We're talking what looks to be now a takeover match, I think is going to be now. Pat McAfee versus Adam Cole looks to be set to be happening. I mean, we had this sort of video a couple of weeks ago. In fact, you actually sent me the link when it came out that Adam Cole went completely crazy on this set.
Yeah.
Where he was being called short, how he was like a wannabe Shawn Michaels, how the only reason he accomplished anything was due to the Undisputed Era. And Adam Cole went basically completely ape, effing and blinding, and said he could have been with his family and stormed off. And it seemed like it was a bit of heat. We had Triple H get involved and have his say. It looked on Twitter, and it looked like these two had buried the hatchet, so to speak, when Pat was invited this week. He went to do commentary the match before the main event and was obnoxious enough that Beth Phoenix didn't want to stay on. I'm going to just point out quickly before we go any further, I've never liked this guy. Even when he was supposed to be a face, I didn't like him. He's just, I don't know what it is. There's something about him I just really has go away heat for me. And I'm not usually that negative with a personality or superstar. Yeah, he's always rubbed me the wrong way, Pat. I've never been a fan of him. And we got to the main event segment, and it felt like he was going to start bigging up the Undisputed Era, but of course he went back to now where he was supposed to be obnoxious, as if he hadn't been before, and was really digging in the Undisputed Era. Adam Cole, got to the point where he kept looking over, and you could just see where this was going for this tag team championship match that was going on the ring. A good match in the ring, but completely destroyed by the fact that Adam Cole went over. Says, I'm only 20 feet away. I can hear you. He picks up the water, throws it in Pat's face. Everyone gets in there. It looks to get physical. Even Triple H and Shawn Michaels come out to try and break it up. While this entire mess and melee is going on, about 20 people, we see Imperium actually retain the tag team championships against Roderick. No, not Roderick. It was Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish. Sorry, and they escaped from the ringside area. This looked like that it was actually going to be broken apart. Pat was actually pushed by Triple H, more or less like get out. You see how Pat was continuing to say how it was an unprofessional workplace and stuff, but he come back and I'm now going to power quote here and said that that Cole, no matter what he does, would always be a little bitch, was more or less his wording. It's paraphrasing there at best. Adam Cole seemed to go for it, but was being held back, and we saw a punt kick given to Adam Cole, which completely knocked him out, and this took us off the show. I'm going to have to be honest with you, George. Not a match I've ever wanted to see, not a match I've ever wanted to think about. I'm not really a fan when footballers are brought in general for this. I'm even less a fan of it when Adam Cole has been involved on so many takeovers in 30-minute classics. This guy had a 400-day NXT championship reign, and he is knocked out by a footballer by one kick to the head. Now, I'm going to forgive everything that happened before that point, because if they want to build something that I suppose perhaps will get a little bit of buzz, the guy apparently has been a famous footballer or whatever, perhaps not someone that I've really known before, being from the UK market. But if they want to build publicity off of this, fair enough. But do not knock out your greatest NXT champion ever with one punt kick. I think it was embarrassing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think a couple of key things here, really. I just don't get how Adam Cole's gone from being the world champion down to this kind of feud. And the fact you're giving Pat McAfee so much offense from the get-go, and the punt of all moves. The punt at the moment is probably one of the most over moves in WWE with Randy Orton. I didn't like it. I felt it didn't really work. I think this is a needless feud. It's not like this is going to be a tag match where you're going to have somebody help Pat McAfee. It's not like Dennis Rodman, Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus DDP, whoever. It's just going to be a straight match, which Adam Cole's a fantastic worker, but to get McAfee to a good match at TakeOver, it's not great, really. I think the fact that you have Pat McAfee get this domination, even though the UNE were there, just looked really stupid to me. It didn't work.
No, I mean, Roderick Strong was at ringside. Like, I know the other two members had lost in a tag team match, so perhaps forgiven they weren't there to try and break things up. But I mean, unless this is a complete squash match, I mean, there is a chance that Pat's been training in the Performance Center because, he has been in and around for, takeovers, the preview shows and stuff for the last couple of years. There is a chance that perhaps he's done some training. Maybe he's going to surprise us or whatever. But I just feel for me that this... I mean, I know it got some buzz in the wrestling community, but I believe on the YouTube channel, according to Brian Alvarez, that this got no more than 150,000 views. NXT in general gets itself normally between 600,000 to 800,000 viewers. So you're talking there, more than 75% of your audience probably are not aware of what was even going on. They did a small clip of this for about a minute on last week's show. It's your go home angle, or your cliffhanger angle for the week. For me, it just doesn't add excitement to want to come back next week. I just really feel, I don't normally say this very often, but I felt let down this week by NXT because of that. I mean, the rest of the show for me was all right. We're going to go on to talk about one real positive point in the next sort of few minutes with Ridge Holland. I want to really dive into his performance. But from this, really, for me, it left a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the trouble is when you're bringing in a celebrity and putting him against your ex-world champion, it just doesn't really work for me. I think this is kind of going to probably go the same way as Gronk at WrestleMania. I think it's probably not going to work. I'll be very surprised if there's a payoff here, really. I just don't see the fact you've got Adam Cole, he's meant to be a heel, facing, and Pat McAfee's the actual bigger heel. It just doesn't really work. Well, what's the benefit here? How's this going to win the ratings war against AEW?
No, which we'll come into that very briefly. In fact, actually, I can call those ratings up for you now because the ratings are out and available for everyone. Of course, no surprise, AEW did win the ratings war this week. They got 901,000 viewers overall, which is a plus 16.56% to NXT's 763,000, which is also an increase, by the way, this week, I should add, which is a plus 6.51% there. So, I mean, the viewership is nearly, 200,000 viewers higher than last week of total viewership, which is really good. It's actually, it's really nice to see there. But I mean, of course, in the demo, Chris Jericho, we happen to mention that at the 18-49, apparently the important demo that they did win that as well, nearly doubling NXT's number as well. So it's interesting to see there. But we're going back to what we just talked there with Adam Cole there, and you said he's supposed to be a heel. Do you think this could be the start to a face turn for the UE, maybe a different direction?
Yeah, so I think potentially a face turn could work, but everything and anything seemed to go wrong with them. I really was surprised that they came out losing and Adam Cole was a face. It's something different, really. I think for me, Adam Cole should be going up to the main roster now. He's done everything he can. Stuck in needless feuds like this, it just doesn't really work for me. I think it's a big ask, really. I'm just very surprised that they've gone with this route. It's a very strange choice of match, really. I just think what I must believe is obviously that Pat McAfee must be some sort of huge celebrity in America. Obviously, being here in the United Kingdom, I don't really know the status, but I do believe you wouldn't get Alan Shearer or a footballer of some sort going against the next world champion in WWE. Even when WWF came to England in 1998, the person that was there against Vince McMahon was Vinnie Jones. It wasn't somebody that's a major British superstar, was it? Let's be fair.
No, and of course, more recently, did Wayne Rooney on an episode of Raw, I believe, with Bad News Barrett, if I'm not mistaken, back at the time. But of course, it didn't lead to anything further. They didn't do certainly not a WrestleMania match, but they certainly didn't do anything in the middle. But they have done WrestleMania with this before. Of course, Lawrence Taylor was against Bam Bam Bigelow back at WrestleMania 11. Of course, we're going back a number of years there. But and of course, WCW, Kevin Green, Mongo McMichael, they've used some footballers in the past there. So I mean, we've seen some mixed success with it. But of course, a lot of actual WWE superstars, some of them have been in pro football. So I mean, or NFL, or it's different formats. And of course, we're going to come on to our next topic actually, which is Ridge Holland, who is actually was a professional rugby player. Apparently, he's been now training with WWE for a number of years now, and he got his opportunity in NXT UK, and he was winning a number of matches, but it was mainly squash matches. He certainly hadn't been pinned or submitted in one-on-one competition in NXT UK. Thank you, Tom Phillips, for that information. Had watched a few of his matches though, and it did look impressive. But he actually got a chance here at the big time. He was here involved in this triple threat match for the vacant North American Championship. He was in there with Oney Lorcan, and as well, of course, the eventual winner of that match, Damian Priest. Holland wasn't pinned. He was the guy that was not involved, so he will get another route, hopefully, to potentially get into the match. But apparently, WWE very high on this guy. They even see him as the next big thing. Interesting line, that one there. Because I was talking as well to a friend of the show as well, of course, James, of course, has also been involved here on SCW. He actually sees him doing potential moves like Brock Lesnar did in the match. I thought it was quite a throwback as well, personally. A lot of the different variations of suplexes. And I really thought they had a stand-up performance. I thought that this potentially could be a very bright future for one Ridge Holland.
Yeah, definitely. I think he looked a star. For me, he came across a bit like WWE or NXT's answer to Brian Cage. I think he had very similar mannerisms and stuff like that. I think it's going to be good. I really like the way they built him up. I like the way that he did get pinned here. That was really sensible. And it wouldn't surprise me if he does end up being in this match at the takeover. Really, I think he's going to win whatever his next match is. He'll end up in the takeover match. I think it's nailed on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have the idea now of William Regal, because we've had Dexter Lumis has been pulled out of the match. He got injured last week, so sadly he won't be involved. So now we've only got two people currently in the match, in Bronson Reed and Damian Priest. I believe Balor and Gargano, if I'm not mistaken, are going to face each other for a spot. I think Ridge is going to take on whoever actually is involved as the the middle person that doesn't get pinned for the final spot. And we know that we've got Kushida, I believe, is involved here. Cameron Grams is going to be one of them, and we've got a mystery opponent as the last spot. I'm going to ask you who you think it is in a minute, George, but I really hope it's Pete Dunne. I don't know if you would feel the same.
Yeah, I think that's sensible. I think you've got to go Pete Dunne or Walter, one of them two if possible. I think both of them two are stars. Pete Dunne's the one, though, that I would definitely like to see. It's overdue.
It certainly is overdue, so I'd like to see that. But no, Rich Holland, I think a bright future for him, and we really do wish him all the best in NXT, and hopefully he'll have lots of success. And comparisons of being the next big thing, certainly not a bad thing. That's what I have to say there. We'll touch on one more topic from NXT that I can think of while we're there. Rhea Ripley was one that you wanted to talk about, George. I mean, she's was involved in the number one contenders match here against Dakota Kai. She's not had the best of a few months. I'm going to be honest with you, I was very pleased to see Kai actually pick up the victory. We did discuss a few weeks ago a potential match at TakeOver, which now looks like it's coming to fruition with Mercedes Martinez, of course, who's now involved with the Robert Stone brand. Was you surprised to see that this has actually come together in this sort of way, and Rhea Ripley actually took the L from this match?
No, I'm not surprised. Based on the recent kind of booking of Ripley, she has been a bit of a throwaway, which it's a real shame, really, how far she's gone since where she was at WrestleMania this year. I just can't believe it's almost the same person.
It's certainly interesting because, I mean, she had all the momentum in the world when she was, when she won and beat Shayna Baszler. You thought that this Rhea Ripley was going to be the next star because she was, again, had an amazing TakeOver War Games, Survivor Series. I mean, the rug's just been pulled beneath her, really. And it feels that something needs to happen. She needs a big win from somewhere. Could Mercedes Martinez be that person to give her that big win to get her back on the right track?
Yeah, maybe. I just think Mercedes Martinez is quite new to this new gimmick, if that makes sense. I just think this is a really hard match, but really, Rhea does need to start winning again. The problem is she's stuck with this Robert Stone brand at the moment, and she should be far better and far more up the card than dealing with this mid-table sort of stable, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, how would you have her going if you were in charge of the booking right now?
I think you've got to have her beat Mercedes. I think it has to be done kind of cleanly. You need to get her to start winning matches. I think the dream match really is Io Shirai Ripley. I think that's the one down the line they have to do. But anything really to get her back. But this week was a big win for Kai. I think it's something new. I think Dakota Kai and Io Shirai is something new. I just interesting to see what they do next. Really, I think it definitely was a fun match. Though the quality of the match was excellent. Although Rhea Ripley dominated for 8 minutes and got nothing out of it, which kind of I thought was pretty pointless, really.
Well, I mean, yeah, they had quite a lengthy match, didn't it? It was a very lengthy opener, but I'm with you. I'm really happy for Dakota Kai. I think she's been growing as one of my favourites in the NXT roster for a number of months now. Since that turn at War Games, I really felt like there's something there with Kai, and she needs to get in the championship picture. I've almost been a bit disappointed how long it's taken to get there, but the timing now feels right. The stars have aligned. Io Shirai is doing a great role as champion. This feels a very fresh feud at the top. So I'm excited to see what it brings to TakeOver. I actually think that it doesn't really harm me if Rhea loses at this point. I think Mercedes Martinez probably needs to win more of those two right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes either way. What I would say is these two women have put in some heck of matches in WWE. If people have seen Mercedes Martinez in the Mae Young Classic over the couple of years she was there, they know she can go. She's looked dominant. She's almost looked like a new Shayna Baszler coming in, actually, since she's arrived on NXT. I'm excited to see what they're going to put together. I think it could be really good. But like you say, perhaps it's a shame Robert Stone is the underlining thing of what's made this feud happen. But we need our reasons for feuds, I guess. So I'm willing to try and let that one slide.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be interested to see what they do.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. Well, we're going to touch on AEW very quickly because there's been a couple of really big talking points from there this week. I think they had an absolutely solid show from top to bottom. I think there's a couple of minors I would have said from the show this week, and one, the women's division. I want to see something more done with it. I'm a bit disappointed we didn't get the Deadly Draw involved in there in some way. Even if it was one match of some sort, I think it would have been nice to have had that on the show. But if you look elsewhere, The 12-man tag team match was absolutely fantastic. I think that the championship match and Moxley's story for himself was really good. I think MJF also, again with his campaign, is absolutely solid. But the first thing I want to touch on with you, George, is Eric Bischoff. The first time in 20 years that he appeared on TNT. What I have to say is with this cameo role he had, because rumors have it right now it's a one-off performance only, he was the moderator for the debate with Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy, and he didn't sort of overtake the role. He was quite comfortable in just letting the other superstars have their moment, have the spotlight, and he just sort of did his role in the background and just did it perfectly, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's great to see him back on TV. I think he was excellent. He didn't overbear the segment. I think it's a natural fit, really. I think the fact that he's doing his podcast 83 weeks with Conrad Thompson. Conrad Thompson's really close with a lot of them in AEW. Clearly, JR's got a podcast as well. It was a natural fit. I think Eric Bischoff to AEW was always kind of going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see him involved in that. Would you like to see him in another role? Maybe like a GM role or something? Would it be cool?
Yeah, I think as long as it's not all the time, I think it's great to see these nostalgic views. I think the only thing kind of that maybe kind of ruined the excitement for me a bit was the spoiler. The spoiler was kind of out a week before, which I think if I didn't really know the spoiler or if I didn't guess it was Eric Bischoff, I definitely would have been a lot more shocked and surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, that did. This the only shameful part with these pre-tapings, unfortunately, is that some of the information from some of the shows does come out sooner. I also did actually was aware of the information. It was a bit of a shame, but you know, it's great to see that still though that there are these moments to look forward to. Because sometimes it does work, I suppose, for people to get their eyes invested. People knew about Keith Lee the week before. I did manage to avoid that one. Well, no, until the last minute. I did find out actually before the last minute. But it was a situation where I just felt to myself that a lot of people at that week tuned into NXT. They wanted to see Keith's big moment. So I guess sometimes the spoilers don't hurt because it can help with the ratings. But I'm much more of a fan of when you get that big surprise, that moment where you just watch it and you just think, wow, what a big moment that is. Because like you said, with Eric Bischoff there, if I'd have not known that, I think I would have popped hard for that. But instead, you know, knowing it was coming, it was just, it felt like this is cool, but I just feel like it could have been more.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to when we go back to having fans.
Yeah, me too. I think that it certainly is going to be something very special there when it does. I wanted to touch on quickly before we close off from AEW and probably from the show this week as well. Of course, the match has been announced for All Out. MJF is going to be going for the AEW Championship. He will be taking on Jon Moxley. I was going to try and do the Justin Roberts style there, but I don't want to let Justin down there. Certainly don't want to burst in the eardrums trying either. But at the same time, I think that this looks like the solid match here. And we mentioned no fans here. But if we have no fans, I kind of feel like that it is MJF's time. It feels like he's got such momentum and such heat on him. Would you think it's the right time to pull the trigger and put the championship on him, regardless if there's fans there or not?
Yeah, I think you've got to do something different. Jon Moxley's had the belt for so long. He's beaten pretty much everybody. So I really want to see MJF get it. MJF, the work they've done to build him up is fantastic. He's probably the greatest talker in wrestling at the moment. I think he's a level above everything else. And anything he's in, it turns to goal base, it seems.
Absolutely. I mean, I loved actually what they did this week with almost like the presidential kind of way where they had the the percentages come up on the screen. He was 188% more likely to win in the polls than Jon Moxley. I love that the poster was not straight and him going completely ballistic, firing someone for not nice chewing gum. There's lots of just little things there for MJF. He's a nice throwback heel, and I would love to see them actually really go over, because I do think the next champion for me needs to be a non-ex-WWE guy. It needs to be, in my opinion, what I call a homegrown AEW guy for me. And I think personally, I think MJF looks the most creditable. He's been built up the best. I do feel he can afford the loss on the first show, because I think it would perhaps show a bit of interest of how we could recoup and get back. But I do feel that before the year and the year end is out, I'd like to see him with the championship, because I think if you're going to book it smart, I think he needs to win, because fans want to see this guy lose. He hasn't lost yet in a singles environment. He's only lost in tag team matches. And I think that the longer he has the championship and people don't see him lost, the more they're going to want to see him beat. The more you're going to not just build a real star out of him, the more you're going to make a new star out of the following champion who eventually does get the win and wins the championship off of him.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think that would make sense. I really think that they need to kind of do this whole thing where they've got a heel champion again. I think Jon Moxley's great. He's great credit, but I agree with everything you said there. I think it'd be great to have a first AEW champion that's from AEW rather than just an ex-WWE superstar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't blame him for doing it up to this point because you look, I mean, Chris Jericho, I mean, come on, you want to get eyes on the prize. People will know Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
They'll go there. Jon Moxley is kind of the same thing. I just think now it's now time because we've been spending a year building these guys up, which is what they wanted to do. And I think now is the time that they start getting the momentum. I mean, also, I don't really see him as an AEW champion, but I'm really a big fan of Darby Allin as well. I think he brings a lot to the table.
Yeah, definitely. I think he does some crazy moves, and I think the whole gimmick's pretty good. I really like sort of the whole presentation with him. I think you never know what's coming next with him. The way they're putting him over and putting him sort of all on a lot of the main shows and main segments. So I think really down the line, I'd love to see him turn heel. I think he could be a really good heel, maybe down the line to face Jon Moxley.
Yeah, that would be fantastic to see him as a heel run at some point down in the future. But I guess he's probably going to have a feud in the meantime with Brian Cage and Ricky Starks going forward. But one last thing I want to touch on him before this week, Sammy Guevara threw a chair and it went into Matthew Hardy's face. Now, from rumour mill, he got a bit of a ticking off after that because Matt Hardy was crimson completely. A lot of blood there after that segment. Obviously, perhaps a bit of an accident, maybe a bit more careful going forward.
Yeah, accidents happen. I think it's one of them things. I think nothing's ever going to be perfect. So there was a lot of blood, but I like Sammy Guevara. I think he's definitely improved since he's been in AEW. These accidents, unfortunately, do happen, but I don't think there should be any sort of any punishment for him.
No, neither do I. I mean, he's only just come back as well, and he was actually involved later in the show as well. We had the old famous Love Actually cards there, and of course he did let everybody know that Chris Jericho is a master debater. But I think he quickly threw that card away once he actually read it out loud himself. So probably not a bad thing to do.
No.
But is there anything you want to talk about quickly before we close off the show this week?
No, it's just been a very interesting week. I really hope that next week we're going to have as much to talk about.
I mean, it's been so eventful, hasn't it? And literally, it's been. We could have talked about more. That's how eventful this week has been in and amongst the wrestling shows. But what I will say is, ladies and gents, if you are watching for the first time, then please, if you like it, of course, give a thumb up. We really appreciate that, and give us a subscribe as well. More videos do come up here on the channel all the time. Next one will be the Q&A, which should be around. Should be available on Sunday at latest, of course, on Monday. But hopefully, will be around for you on Sunday. And as well as that, we'll be back with This Week in Wrestling, which will be around for you next week as well. Other videos pop up as well. And all we ask you to do is just to keep an eye out, perhaps hit the bell, and you can be notified when a video comes up. And if you can also share it with one friend, it goes a long way and would really help the growth of this channel even further. Because, of course, we want to give as much content for you people as possible, as long as you guys are enjoying it. But that's all from us anyway. And George, thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me on again.
No problem. We'll see you next time here on SCW, the Wrestling Channel. Take care and have yourselves a great day.